Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode 46 of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want, and we try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. This week's intro was done by the amazing Dan Flynn. God, I love that animation. And you can get a link to his YouTube page in the iCard or the description down below. But with that said, let's get going. So something that I'm kind of making into a trend for my Super Nintendo episodes is that I love to start the episode out with a zoom out. Now, as you can see here with this corner that I tucked Mario away in, this is the player's limit as far as how much of the Mushroom Castle you're allowed to see, but if we zoom the camera out, it becomes more apparent that there's a lot more architecture than the game lets on. And also when you get the entire kingdom into one frame, you can see that the area is actually pretty small, which is pretty surprising considering the fact that this is considered one of the bigger areas of the game. So a couple things to note in this opening sequence. One is that you can see more of the mound that Mario's house rests under. And if you look at the vanilla example in the lower left-hand corner, you can see that most of it's skewed. We can see that Princess Peach's sprite disappears once Bowser passes over her. And there's a beautiful Mario sprite that's skewed underneath Princess Peach's mound. You know, off-camera secrets is in the title of all of my videos, so I figure about a minute in, why don't we actually deliver on that promise? Here in Merrymore during the wedding scene with Booster and Princess Peach, there are some great off-camera secrets. So essentially what we're doing here is we are running up at 4 times the original speed, so Mario can reload the map and walk up from the bottom and make his way up, and find some placeholder sprites that are actually hidden off-screen. Now, it's pretty amazing in itself that they have placeholder characters off-screen waiting to be part of a scripted scene, but what's even more amazing about this particular scene is that there's actually unused sprites here. Over here are some sea urchins that were never used in the game, and although a Shock Bowser, a Cake, and the chefs are used later on in this map, the sea urchins never do. Also, I should point out that Bowser has any person's reaction being stuck in the void. So if you'll remember from my Earthbound episode, there was one part of the game where Tessie comes out of the water, but there's actually a sprite made on the sprite layer that covers up Tessie, so we couldn't get a good look at her. Well, Super Mario RPG has something kinda similar, and it's implemented in almost every aspect of the game. Only in this game, whenever Mario passes through an object, you'll oftentimes find a silhouette of the areas that Mario's gonna fall behind, and that silhouette is on the sprite layer. So like you just saw in that opening cutscene with Bowser going into his castle, there was a tiny little shadow there. But also when Mario falls into the pipe in his house, as well as any pipe in the game, you can also remove some layers to reveal more shadows. Yeah, like this particular silhouette is pretty much clearly defined as a pipe. And since these tree stumps can be warped into, they also have their own silhouettes. But wait a second here, what's going on behind Mario? Yeah, believe it or not, that's a minion of Bowyer. Well, don't ask me to explain why, but for some reason when you pick up this one star in the game, behind several layers is this Bowyer enemy that triggers with the animation of the star. Now don't be confused, this has nothing to do with the other Bowyer enemy that's eavesdropping in the corner of the screen, because if you look here, you can see both of them exist at the same time. It's just something that blew my mind away. Apparently all the water in Super Mario RPG has a masking filter that covers over a plane texture. So if you remove the layer with the water effect, you essentially just drain out any body of water you want in the game. And the same can be said when you're trying to reach Johnny's ship, only here it makes a lot more sense because Mario finds himself submerged underwater. And you know what, I like this so much, let's do a quick zoom out of this area to show you almost the entire pond without its water. It's actually pretty crazy how much of this area is not being used. Granted, I don't know why Mario would want to go out into the middle of a pond, like over in the upper left-hand corner over here, but it's pretty shocking to me that there's even water out this far. In fact, the other side of the tadpole pond also has a huge chunk of unexplorable environment. Now we're checking out Booster's Fortress, which is easily my favorite part of the game. And right at the very start, you can see Booster spying on Mario and Bowser from the inside of his keep. And you notice that he'll peek for a little while and then move away. So what happens to the sprite when it goes off screen? Well, as it turns out, it's fairly simple. When the sprite moves down, the sprite stays there until it's ready to move back up again. No shocking revelation there, but it's included there to satiate curiosity. Now this was wicked bizarre. Now usually when you remove all the layers, you either get a black background, and in some cases during battle scenes especially, you'll get like a green background. But when I removed all the layers for this scene where Princess Peach is at the top of Booster's tower, you can remove the layers to find some weird glitchy missing number looking stuff scrolling across the screen. Oh, now we're talking. The most highly requested scene for this episode, what happens to Mario when he goes behind the curtain to switch into Retro Mario? When you remove the layer that is the curtain, you can see that Retro Mario is just sitting there in the corner waiting to be essentially commandeered, I suppose. So when you walk up to Retro Mario, regular Mario just simply disappears. And then from there, you're in control of Retro Mario. And of course, when your time is up, Retro Mario runs back into the curtain, disappears, and you are now replaced with regular Mario again. So this is a puzzle in Booster's Tower where you use the ancestors of Booster to match the order that you saw in the lobby area. Guess wrong and you encounter one of Booster's minions. But guess right, and Booster himself gives you the key to the room. Now what's really odd here is that once you grab the key, the sprite for Booster gets all jangled up. Ew. So now we got Mario chasing Booster up a hill. Everyone's making their way to Marrymore so that Booster can get hitched. And if we remove the layer of the hill, you can see the background in full glory. Now that all of our attention isn't focused on dodging barrels, we can take a look at some of the scenery here, like Bowser's Keep over here, Volcano where you meet the Axum Rangers, and even Nimbus Land. So here in the special suite in Marrymore, we have Mario enjoying a nice hot shower. Even makes his skin a little bit pink. But there's actually a little bit more to this room than meets the eye. Again, if I could just travel downwards, this would make it so much shorter, but I can't. I only have a code that allows me to go up and left. But if we go all the way up and reset the map, we can come up from the bottom again, and we can find NPCs below the room of the suite. Now these are the NPCs that show up when you can't afford the suite and you have to work at the hotel to relieve your debt. And what's really interesting is that there's multiple customers, some of which tip you while the others just say thank you. Now that occurrence can happen naturally in the game, of course, but to see that they use separate characters to depend on which response you get gives us a little bit of insight of how this game is programmed. Alright, it's time to get some smooches. In the vanilla version of the kissing scene, you can see a spotlight effect that circles around Mario to kind of surprise you who ends up kissing you. However, if we remove this filter, you can actually see that the background that Mario and gang are pressed against goes on for a lot longer than the game lets on. We can also see what the other characters are doing while they're waiting to give Mario a big, frothy, wet one. So oddly enough, a lot of people already know the answer to this, but they wanted me to cover it anyway. So behind this building in the Mushroom Kingdom, there's an NPC hiding away and he gives you hints and tips throughout your adventure. And of course, a lot of people want to know what this character looks like, but unfortunately, when you remove all the layers, you can see that nobody's there. And this is because the developers have it coded that they can have invisible NPCs. And so in a case like this, they just use that value. So we just rescued the princess, we brought her back to the Mushroom Kingdom, and she was told to stay. And as we step outside the Mushroom Kingdom, we discover that the princess escapes from her chambers and rejoins the party. And in this cutscene, you'll also see Mallow. So if we go up above the castle and walk over to the right, we can see both Mallow and Princess Peach with a blue parasol, usually it's pink, queued up and ready for the scene. So naturally, when we get Princess Peach with the parasol into the scene, it would just make sense that when you go back to that placeholder area, the character disappears. Yeah, okay, Nightmare Fuel. I was expecting that. Here we go, Monstro Town. Now, most of the areas in this game have absolutely no other environments outside of their boundaries. They might be there, but you can't see them, at least not by normal means. However, in Monstro Town, in the bottom left-hand corner, there are two rooms that can be traveled to by the player. Now, the one on the far left, I can't account for. I don't know where it comes from. But after doing some heavy research, the room on the right is the exit room to Monstro Town. It's just that when you walk over there, all the functions and loaded sprites aren't coded to function there. However, if we go to the exit room by normal means, you can see that it's nearly identical. And here's a bonus thing you didn't know. If we remove a certain layer, you can see that the flower bush tree thing actually has a sprite for the dirt surface of it. I don't know if that implies that you were at one point able to grow these trees or if you were able to cut them down, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think this exists anywhere in the game. Well, the Axum Rangers just asked where the blade is. Ask and you shall receive. So even when you beat Exor, his eyes and mouth never disappear. However, if you remove the sprite layer, it's interesting to note that you can essentially turn Exor into a normal sword. So the beginning and the end of the game come together well to make an interesting fact here, and that is that behind the clouds at the very beginning of the game, you can remove those to find a star with patches on it. It can be somewhat seen, but it's mostly skewed behind those clouds, and the details of it are without a doubt hard to see in the vanilla version. However, it's interesting that that detail was left in on the original sprite, because that same exact design is used at the end of the game when reviewing the epilogue. Here in the epilogue scene where you can see the Shy Guy stealing the clown car, just out of shot, you can see that he rises up and then he falls back down, which is just to waste time before he turns around. Throughout this parade sequence, there's lots of instances where there's mini sprites made, but one thing or another is skewing it a little bit. So if we remove those textures that cover up our little sprites, we can see their full design. So in one of these beautiful ending screens, you can see that there's actually several layers that are covering up a fully designed background. And if we remove all the top layers, you can see it in full.